This first group comprises the imposters of the muscle car world. These are vehicles that may possess the requisite two doors and aggressive styling cues, but fundamentally lack the one element that defines the genre: muscle. They were often the entry-level, budget-oriented versions of legendary nameplates designed to capitalize on a famous name without delivering the performance associated with it. For new enthusiasts, these cars represent a significant pitfall known as the base model trap. 1962 to 1964 Buick Wildcat. The early Buick Wildcat was a tweener, a car that attempted to be both a luxury cruiser and a performance machine, yet failed to master either role. It existed in an automotive no man's land, outgunned by true muscle cars and outluxed by other offerings within the Buick lineup. It was equipped with a potent 401 CI nailhead V8, producing 325 horsepower and an impressive 445 pound-feet of torque. However, burdened by a curb weight of nearly 4,700 pounds, its performance was respectable but not scintillating. A contemporary road test recorded a 0 to 60 mph time of 8.3 seconds, a figure easily bested by lighter intermediates. Critically, the Wildcat was less powerful than the contemporary Pontiac GTO and was considered less visually appealing than the Chevrolet Impala SS, two key competitors that ultimately captured the market's attention and sales. As a result, the Wildcat never sold well. Today, its value is stagnant, with Hagerty valuing a 1963 Wildcat Sport Coupe in number 3 condition at around $12,400. It remains a forgotten model that offers little to a modern collector besides high fuel bills and a floaty, disconnected ride. 1967 Buick Grand Sport 340. The 1967 Buick GS 340 is a prime example of a parts orphan. It was a one-year-only model featuring a small displacement 340 Ci V8 that produced 260 horsepower. It was created as a lower-cost entry into the Grand Sport line, but was overshadowed by the more powerful and desirable GS 400. Its design was understated, lacking the muscular stance of its peers. The critical issue for owners in 2025 is parts availability. The 340 was a unique engine, not sharing many components with other Buick V8s. Finding internal components or even basic rebuild kits like pistons and bearings is a major challenge for restorers, often requiring custom fabrication. Its value is low, reflecting its undesirable status as a forgotten middle child between the common Skylark and the mighty GS 400. Hagerty does not list the GS 340 specifically, but related 1967 Skylarks are valued low, and even the much more desirable Riviera GS is valued at only around $24,600. A running example might be a decent cruiser, but if the engine ever requires a major rebuild, the owner faces a bill that will dwarf the car's value, making it a money pit in waiting. 1969 Dodge Charger 500. This is a controversial but crucial inclusion. A correct, numbers-matching Hemi Charger 500 is a six-figure collector's item, and far from worthless. However, a cheap Charger 500 project is one of the worst investments in the entire muscle car hobby. The unique, hand-modified parts that make the car special are also what make it a financial black hole to restore. The Charger 500 was a limited production homologation special built for NASCAR, featuring a flush-mounted cornet grille and a unique flush rear window plug to improve aerodynamics on the super speedways. Only 392 were produced for street use. These unique aero parts are virtually unobtainable today. A project car that is missing its specific grille or rear window plug is essentially just a modified Charger RT, and the cost to fabricate and correctly install these parts is astronomical. A bargain Charger 500 is almost certainly a trap, either a fake clone or a legitimate basket case missing its most valuable and irreplaceable components. This is a car for experts with deep pockets only. 1964 Mercury Comet Cyclone. Like the Wildcat, the Mercury Comet Cyclone was an attempt to create a muscle car from a standard passenger car platform. Despite being equipped with a decent engine, its excessive weight and uninspired styling caused it to get lost in the crowd. The standard engine was a 289 Ci V8 with 210 horsepower, a respectable motor for a mid-size car, but not enough to overcome the Cyclone's nearly 3,000-pound curb weight. The result was poor handling compared to its more nimble peers and mediocre performance, with published 0 to 60 mph times in the high 9-second range. The styling was generic, featuring some muscle car hallmarks like bucket seats and special wheel covers, but it lacked a distinct identity to separate it from a standard, family-oriented Comet. While rare, high-performance factory drag versions are valuable, the common 289-powered cars that make up the bulk of the market are not considered strong investments. Recent sales of 1964 Comets range between $24,000 and $28,000, making them affordable but not a vehicle with significant appreciation potential. It is another almost car, a footnote in the muscle car story that is best avoided unless one finds an ultra-rare factory drag racing special. 1963 to 1964 Ford Falcon Sprint. The Falcon Sprint was the dress rehearsal for the Mustang, and it clearly shows its transitional nature. It was Ford's attempt to inject sportiness into its compact Falcon line, but the final product was underpowered, awkwardly styled, and was immediately rendered obsolete by the launch of the Mustang in April 1964. The Sprint was powered by a 260 Ci V8, making only 164 horsepower, an output insufficient to give the nearly 3,000-pound car any real performance credibility. Although it shared its basic underpinnings with the Mustang, the Sprint lacked the Mustang's revolutionary long hood, short deck styling and immense cultural appeal. The Mustang's instant and overwhelming success immediately cannibalized the Sprint's sales, sealing its fate. In 2025, the market treats the Sprint as a historical curiosity rather than a desirable classic. Hagerty values a 1964 Sprint convertible at $26,800 in number 3 condition, significantly less than a comparable Mustang GT from the same period. Owning a Falcon Sprint today is owning the less cool, less valuable, and largely forgotten older sibling of a legend. 1963 to 1964 Studebaker Avanti. The Studebaker Avanti was a radical, futuristic design, unfortunately attached to a dying company. Penned by the legendary Raymond Loewy, its design was polarizing, a love-hate affair for many. Performance was a strong point, with the base 289 Ci V8 producing a healthy 240 horsepower, and supercharged R2 versions offering even more. The car's fatal flaw was its fiberglass body, which proved to be a production nightmare. Studebaker, in partnership with the Molded Fiberglass Body Company, encountered massive problems with panel fit, finish quality, and production delays, which severely damaged the car's launch and the company's reputation. Today, these cars are known for common fiberglass-related issues, including stress cracks near the fenders and rocker panels, and sagging doors caused by the hinge boxes cracking loose from the fiberglass A-pillars. As a true orphan car from a defunct brand, parts are exceptionally difficult to source, making restoration a costly and specialized endeavor. Hagerty values a 1963 Avanti at $23,000 in number 3 condition. While not worthless in monetary terms, the potential for a financially ruinous restoration due to its unique body construction makes it an extremely risky purchase for anyone but the most dedicated Studebaker specialist. 1968 Oldsmobile Toronado. The Oldsmobile Toronado was a front-wheel drive personal luxury coupe marketed with muscle car undertones. It was an innovative but deeply flawed vehicle, known for its bizarre handling characteristics, notoriously poor brakes, and questionable reliability. Its front-wheel drive layout, which placed over 60% of the car's 4,600-pound weight over the front wheels, resulted in peculiar handling dynamics, including severe understeer that could snap to oversteer under certain throttle conditions, along with extraordinary front tire wear. Its brakes were widely considered its weak link, prone to severe overheating and fade after just a few hard stops. Reliability was another major concern, with complex and failure-prone vacuum systems operating the hidden headlights and a high potential for rust in the structural pillars. While historically significant as a pioneer of modern front-wheel drive systems in American cars, its collector value is very low. The Classic.com market benchmark for the first-generation Toronado is just over $17,000. The Toronado is an engineering experiment that is heavy, handles strangely, cannot stop reliably, and is a nightmare to repair. It is a textbook example of a classic car that is interesting but terrible to own. The Money Pits: Guaranteed Financial Headaches. This section details the vehicles that represent the most significant financial risks to a potential buyer. These are the cars that lure enthusiasts with a low initial purchase price, only to drain their finances with impossible-to-find parts, nightmarish repair processes, and restoration costs that can easily eclipse the value of a brand-new performance car. A common thread among these vehicles is the innovation penalty. In the classic car world, being a technological pioneer is often a curse. Cars that introduced complex, unproven technology frequently suffer from this penalty. Oldsmobile's F85 Jetfire's turbocharger is a prime example. While historically significant as the first of its kind, its unreliability, the lack of contemporary mechanical understanding of forced induction, and the subsequent scarcity of its unique parts make it exceptionally difficult and expensive to maintain 6 decades later. The market values for these cars are suppressed despite their historical firsts. Groundbreaking innovation does not guarantee high value when it is tied to fundamental flaws. For long-term ownership and investment, the market values proven, reliable technology far more highly than flawed, pioneering technology. These cars are museum pieces, not practical classics. This first group comprises the imposters of the muscle car world. These are vehicles that may possess the requisite 2 doors and aggressive styling cues, but fundamentally lack the one element that defines the genre: muscle. They were often the entry-level, budget-oriented versions of legendary nameplates designed to capitalize on a famous name without delivering the performance associated with it. For new enthusiasts, these cars represent a significant pitfall known as the base model trap. 1965 AMC Rambler Marlin. The Rambler Marlin is a car doomed by its bizarre styling. Its design, which grafted a massive, sloping fastback roofline onto the front half of a conventional Rambler Classic, was described as highly unattractive from just about any angle, and sales were dismal as a result. While it could be optioned with AMC's respectable 270 horsepower 327 V8, its strange looks overshadowed any performance potential it may have had. As an unpopular model from a defunct brand, aftermarket support is very weak, and finding specific trim or body parts is a challenge. Its low desirability is reflected in its value. Hagerty values a 1966 Marlin at just $14,233. A full restoration, however, could easily cost 3 to 4 times that amount, with no hope of recouping the investment. The Marlin is a quirky but ultimately ugly car that costs as much to restore as a beautiful one, making it a guaranteed way to lose money. 1962 Dodge Dart. The 1962 Dodge Dart is another car cursed by bizarre styling and its orphan status within the Mopar family. It was a downsized, radically redesigned model that was met with confusion and derision from the public, described as a vision from a fever dream with a bizarro front end featuring quad headlamps at different heights. While it could be ordered with the legendary 413 Max Wedge V8, turning it into a formidable drag strip weapon, these versions are exceedingly rare and valuable. The vast majority sold were mundane commuters. The critical issue for restorers is that the 1962 model features a one-year-only body style. This means that trim, glass, and body panels are nearly impossible to find. Restoring one almost certainly requires a donor car, which is just as difficult to locate. With virtually no reproduction parts support and minimal collector value for non-Max Wedge cars, the 1962 Dart is a project to avoid at all costs. 1961 to 1963 Oldsmobile Jetfire. The Oldsmobile Jetfire is the poster child for the innovation penalty. As the world's first turbocharged production car, it was a technological marvel, but in practice it was an unreliable and overly complicated disaster. Its 215 CI aluminum V8 was turbocharged to produce 215 horsepower, an impressive 1 horsepower per cubic inch. The fatal flaw was the turbo system itself. To prevent engine-destroying detonation with its high 10.25:1 compression ratio, it required a fluid injection system that sprayed a mixture of distilled water and methanol, dubbed turbo rocket fluid, into the intake charge under boost. This system was notoriously complex and prone to leaks. Owners frequently forgot to refill the fluid reservoir, which would trigger a safety mechanism that severely limited engine power. Frustrated owners flooded dealerships with complaints. Unable to reliably fix the complex system, many dealers were authorized by Oldsmobile to simply remove the entire turbo setup and replace it with a conventional 4-barrel carburetor, a conversion that was offered to customers free of charge. As a result, finding a Jetfire with a complete functional turbo system today is very rare. Restoring one requires expert knowledge and custom rebuilt parts, a process that can easily cost more than the car's final value. Hagerty values a top-condition 1962 Jetfire at $47,000, but a project car is valued at only $15,000. It is a fascinating but deeply flawed piece of history, and a guaranteed path to financial ruin for the unprepared. This final group represents the bottom of the barrel. These are not merely bad investments or frustrating projects. They are cars that are fundamentally flawed, historically infamous, or simply sad representations of a once great name. These are the vehicles to avoid, no matter the price. The tarnished legends, post-60s failures. These cars are not from the 1960s, but they are worthless because of their 1960s legacy. They are the zombies of the muscle car world, famous names from the golden era slapped onto pathetic, underpowered cars from the malaise era of the 1970s, forever tarnishing the reputation of their legendary predecessors. 1973 Pontiac GTO. Once the undisputed king of muscle, the 1973 GTO was reduced to a bloated, unattractive option package on the Le Mans. Choked by new emissions regulations, its 400 CI V8 produced a mere 230 HP. 1978 Oldsmobile 442. The mighty 442, once a symbol of balanced performance, became a garish sticker package on the hideous Aeroback Cutlass Salon. Its oversized decals and stripes could not hide its complete lack of performance. 1975 Ford Mustang II, perhaps the most infamous of all. This was a muscle car based on the subcompact Ford Pinto. Its top engine upon introduction was a V6 making a pathetic 105 HP, later upgraded to a 302 CI V8 that managed only 140 HP. These cars represent the death of an era. They have no redeeming performance qualities and virtually no collector value. Buying one is an exercise in irony, a sad reminder of what was lost to emissions regulations and the oil crisis. 1960 to 1963 Chevrolet Corvair. The Chevrolet Corvair is the car that launched 1,000 lawsuits and made consumer advocate Ralph Nader a household name. It is the infamous poster child of Nader's book, Unsafe at Any Speed, due to a flawed rear suspension design that could lead to deadly accidents. The early Corvair's rear-engine swing-axle suspension had a high roll center that during hard cornering could cause the outside rear wheel to tuck under the car. This action would drastically reduce the tire's contact patch, leading to a sudden and violent loss of traction and severe oversteer, often resulting in a single-car accident. Internal documents later revealed that General Motors was aware of the flaw and could have rectified it with a simple, inexpensive anti-roll bar, but declined to do so for cost reasons. This decision led to over 100 lawsuits and a massive blow to GM's public reputation. Beyond the dangerous handling, the air-cooled engines were prone to oil leaks and throwing fan belts, the latter of which would cause the engine to rapidly overheat. While later models, 1965 and newer, featured a completely redesigned and safe independent rear suspension, the stigma of the early models has tainted the entire line forever, keeping collector values low. It is a car with a dark past that offers mediocre performance and a cloud of controversy. 1966 Dodge Coronet Base Slant 6. The base model 1966 Dodge Coronet is the ultimate muscle car imposter. It wears the same handsome muscular B-body sheet metal as the legendary 426 Hemi Coronet RT, but it is powered by one of the most lethargic engines of the decade. The standard engine was the 225 Ci Slant 6, an engine renowned for its incredible durability and reliability, but also for producing only 140 HP. While the engine itself is nearly indestructible, placing it in a mid-size car weighing over 3,400 pounds results in dangerously slow acceleration. It is the absolute definition of all show and no go. This vehicle represents the most extreme example of the base model trap. A genuine Hemi Coronet is a six-figure blue-chip collectible. A Slant 6 Coronet, by contrast, struggles to break the $10,000 barrier. J.D. Power shows an average retail price for a V8-powered Coronet 500 at just $14,050, with the six-cylinder version being worth significantly less. This car is a rolling disappointment that promises the world with its muscular looks and delivers absolutely nothing. 1968 Mercury Montego MX Base Models. The base model 1968 Mercury Montego MX takes the disappointing formula of the Slant 6 Coronet and makes it even worse by putting it in a slightly heavier, more luxurious, and even more forgotten package. The base engine for the entire Montego line was a 200 Ci inline 6, making a truly pathetic 115 HP. The optional base V8 was a two-barrel 302 Ci with only 210 HP. This was Mercury's version of the Ford Fairlane and Torino, but it never gained the same market traction or enthusiast following, especially in its base form. As a result, its values are in the absolute basement of the classic car market. Hagerty has recorded recent auction sales of Montego MX models for as low as $3,300. J.D. Power lists an average retail value of just $12,950 for V8 models, with six-cylinder cars being worth even less. These cars are also prone to common issues like transmission problems and severe rust, making a cheap example a potential money pit. If a Slant 6 Coronet is a disappointment, a six-cylinder Montego is a tragedy. It is slow, obscure, and has no collector value. The ultimate money pit, the cheap project car. The single most worthless 60s muscle car is not a specific model, but a category. The cheap project car, it is the rust basket case version of any car, but especially one of the troubled models detailed in this report. It is the siren song of a bargain that inevitably leads to financial ruin. The illusion of a cheap $5,000 project car is a myth. The real cost is in the restoration. A professional restoration can easily cost between $50,000 and $100,000, with some concourse-level builds exceeding $200,000. Even a dedicated DIY restoration can cost $15,000 to $30,000 in parts, materials, and specialized tools alone. Furthermore, the annual cost of classic car ownership, the ownership tax, can be substantial. Even a finished car requires thousands per year for specialized insurance, $1,000 to $3,000, routine maintenance, $1,000 to $4,000, and proper climate-controlled storage, $500 to $3,000. The fundamental equation of classic car economics dictates that it is always more financially prudent to buy a finished car well-maintained. Sellers often have $20,000 or more invested in parts and labor than their final asking price. Buying a project means volunteering to be the person who loses that money. The most worthless 60s muscle car to buy in 2025 is the one that has been sitting in a field for 30 years. Rust, missing parts, and decades of neglect will turn any dream into a nightmare. Conclusion: how to buy the dream, not the nightmare. The analysis of these 20 vehicles reveals the significant pitfalls awaiting the unprepared buyer in the classic car market. The list has detailed the underpowered, the poorly designed, the unreliable money pits, and the downright infamous. The primary takeaway is the critical importance of thorough research. The world of 60s muscle is filled with nuance, where a name on a fender does not guarantee performance, and a low price tag often hides a world of financial and mechanical pain. A truly valuable classic car, one that is both a joy to own and a sound financial asset, possesses a clear set of traits. These criteria, which the cars on this list fail to meet, are the key to a successful purchase. Performance and desirability. It must have the right engine and the right factory options package that enthusiasts covet. Condition and originality. The vehicle should be as close to factory correct as possible or restored to a verifiably high standard with proper documentation. Rarity. It should have been produced in limited numbers, but not so limited that essential parts are impossible to find. Cultural significance. It must be a car that people dreamed of owning when it was new and continue to dream of owning today. The cars on this list fail on one and often all of these points. They are the anti-investments. The single most important piece of advice for any aspiring collector is to buy the best, most complete, and most well-documented example of a desirable model that one can possibly afford. It may require saving for another year, but it is the only way to ensure the dream becomes a reality. The most expensive car one can ever buy is a cheap one. The golden age of American muscle represents a pinnacle of automotive history, defined by big block V8s, roaring exhausts, and the visceral thrill of straight-line speed. For many enthusiasts, owning a piece of this 1960s dream is the ultimate collecting goal. However, the classic car market of 2025 is a landscape fraught with peril for the uninformed buyer. 20th, 1965 to 1968 Plymouth Fury 3 base engines. The Plymouth Fury 3 was marketed as a comfortable, spacious full-size automobile possessing the imposing dimensions of a muscle car, but none of its performance credentials. In its most common forms, it was a muscle car in size only. The standard engine options were a 3.7-liter, 225-inch slant 6, producing a meager 145 horsepower, or a 5.2-liter, 318-inch V8 that offered a slightly more respectable but still underwhelming 230 HP. For a vehicle of its substantial weight and size, these power plants were woefully inadequate for anything resembling spirited driving. While more potent engines like the 383-inch V8 were available, the vast majority of Fury 3s sold were equipped with these base power plants, making them the most common and least desirable versions found on the market today. The collector market has passed harsh judgment on these models. Data from Hagerty for 2025 shows a 1965 Fury 3 convertible with the base 318 V8 valued at a mere $14,500 in number 3 good condition, with a further 20% deduction for the 6-cylinder version. Recent auction results confirm this lack of interest, with one 1965 example selling for just $9,975. The verdict is clear. The base engine Fury 3 is a land yacht masquerading as a performance car, offering all the drawbacks of a large 60s automobile: poor handling, terrible fuel economy, and difficult parking, with none of the straight-line excitement. 19th, 1966 AMC Rebel Base V8. American Motors Corporation designed the Rebel as its contender against mainstream intermediates like the Chevrolet Chevelle, but it was an exercise in automotive mediocrity. The optional 4.7-liter, 287-cubic-inch V8 produced only 200 HP, which was simply not competitive with its rivals from the Big Three. The standard engine was an even less inspiring 232-inch 6-cylinder with just 155 HP. Compounding its performance deficit was a design that was described as relatively dull, lacking any of the visual aggression or flair needed to stand out in the crowded marketplace. As a product of a defunct manufacturer, the Rebel suffers from the orphan brand curse. While some specialist suppliers exist, finding specific trim and mechanical parts can be a significant challenge, and the cost of restoring an unpopular model will almost certainly exceed its market value. Hagerty valuation data for the Rebel is sparse, a reflection of its obscurity. But related models like the 1966 Marlin, which shared the same platform and engines, are valued at only $14,233 in number 3 condition. This indicates a very soft and uninterested market. The Rebel is a forgettable car that is neither powerful nor attractive, promising a restoration project filled with frustration and zero financial or performance payoff. 18. 1968 Pontiac Tempest base models. The Tempest name is inextricably linked to the GTO, the car that ignited the muscle car era. However, a base model 1968 Tempest is not a GTO. It is a prime example of the base model trap, sharing the GTO's handsome sheet metal but none of its performance soul. For 1968, the entire GM A-body line was restyled with a curvy Coke bottle shape, giving the base Tempest the same sexy silhouette as its legendary sibling. The illusion of performance ends there. The standard engine was a 250 cubic inch overhead cam inline 6 that produced 175 HP. The base V8 option was a 350 cubic inch 2-barrel V8, making only 265 HP. These figures are a world away from the GTO's standard 350 HP, 400 cubic inch V8. The market reflects this performance chasm with a colossal value gap. A 1968 Pontiac Le Mans, a slightly more upscale version of the Tempest, equipped with the base V8, is valued by Hagerty at just $10,200. In stark contrast, a base 1968 GTO starts at $21,900 and climbs rapidly with better options. Purchasing a base Tempest is buying the name, not the car. It offers the GTO's good looks, but none of its substance, making it a classic automotive tease. 17. 1967 Chevrolet Camaro, base 6-cylinder. The 1967 Chevrolet Camaro is a certified automotive icon, but the legend was built on the V8-powered SS and Z28 models, not the 6-cylinder base version. This entry-level model was created to compete with the volume-selling 6-cylinder Mustangs and was in essence a stylish commuter car. The standard engine was a 230 cubic inch inline-six with a mere 140 HP, with an optional 250 cubic inch version offering a marginal increase to 155 HP. Performance was lethargic, with a documented 0 to 60 time of 12.5 seconds, making it dangerously slow in modern traffic. These cars are deceptively affordable, with average prices hovering around $22,500, a figure that reflects their complete lack of performance credentials. The value difference between the 6-cylinder and V8 models is staggering. Hagerty data shows a base V8 Camaro coupe valued around $23,500, but a desirable Z28 or big block SS can easily command 3 to 4 times that amount. A significant 30% value deduction is typically applied for the 6-cylinder models, making them a poor investment. A 6-cylinder first-generation Camaro is a beautiful but deeply frustrating car to own in 2025, and the cost of a proper V8 conversion is a financial mistake. 16. 1966 Ford Mustang, base 6-cylinder. The original pony car is an American icon, but in its base form, it was an underpowered secretary's car that created a segment the true muscle cars would soon come to dominate. The standard engine was a 200 CI inline-six, producing a meager 120 horsepower. This engine, while durable, was known for being anemic and notoriously difficult to modify for increased performance due to its integral log-style intake manifold, which was cast as part of the cylinder head. Purists and market experts correctly argue that these Falcon-based 6-cylinder cars are pony cars, not muscle cars, as they lack the big block power that defines the genre. The market valuation reflects this distinction. A 3-condition 6-cylinder coupe is valued by Hagerty at just $16,400, while a V8-powered fastback from the same year is valued at nearly 3 times that amount at $49,000. Common ownership problems include chronic starting issues, carburetor and distributor woes, and a general lack of power that makes highway driving a chore. The most popular classic car in the world is also one of the most overrated in its base form. It is a stylish and historic vehicle that is ultimately a disappointment to drive. The Misfits, flawed by design. This group consists of the automotive misfits and oddballs. These are cars that, due to bizarre styling choices, compromised engineering, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time, never found a successful niche. They were often the result of a corporate strategy to hastily enter the lucrative muscle car market without investing in a dedicated platform. This almost car phenomenon resulted in vehicles that were fundamentally compromised. Models like the Ford Falcon Sprint, Buick Wildcat, and Mercury Comet Cyclone were essentially existing family or compact cars, dressed up with sporty trim, bucket seats, and a mid-range V8. This half-measure strategy created cars that lacked the cohesive, aggressive styling and purpose-built performance engineering of true muscle cars like the Pontiac GTO or Dodge Charger. The market's reaction, both in the 1960s and today, demonstrates that this approach was a failure in the passion-driven muscle car segment. These cars never sold as well as their purpose-built rivals, and their collector values remained significantly lower. In a market defined by peak performance and authentic identity, these almost cars were perceived as cynical marketing exercises and have been penalized by collectors ever since.